Well, good evening and welcome members, officers and those members of the public here at the meeting and those joining us virtually. Item 1 on the agenda is to receive apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence that have been received from Councillor Lavelle, Councillor Newton and Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you. Item 2 is the minutes of the previous meeting, which was the Monday, the 24th of February. I'll run through them page at a time. Starting with page 4, page 5, page 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Someone like to move those? Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Hackett. Okay, all in favour, please show. And against? Abstentions?
25 for and 5 abstentions, Chair.
So. Item 4, declarations of interest. The name is declared should be referred to the agenda item and describe the nature of their interest when the item is being discussed. Item 5 is the agreement. Agenda items part 1 and 2. We do have a part 2 agenda item tonight, which is agenda item 18. So I can propose from the chair that we go into part 2 at that appropriate time. Seconded by Councillor James. Please show all in favour and support.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Item 6 is to consider correspondence brought forward by the chair. I don't have anything of any particular importance. I don't, we don't have anything.
No, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 7. To receive an update from Police Superintendent Toby Davis, who's here with us now, and Toby's going to speak for roughly around about 10 minutes with a few minutes afterwards for any relevant questions. So,
right, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, Toby Davis. So, those who don't know me, local police area commander for North and West Devon, which obviously includes yourselves as a big part of that. So, sad to say, this is going to be my last time giving this report because I am due to retire in mid-April. So I know you're looking at me and can't believe it, thinking my age is impossible. I know. But I am, I would start by saying how grateful I am, to be honest, for the support I get from elected members. I've had from Torres District Council as a whole over the years. It does make such a huge difference. And I've unusually done this is because the person who was going to replace me, we know who that is, and they've asked if they could today be in the background just to get a sense of how these meetings run. And so Emma Butler-Jones is going to be the new commander. Well, barring something massive happening next 3 weeks, is going to be the new commander. And hopefully we'll get an invite to come down here and introduce herself when it starts.
Just bring her up so that we can.
Do you want to come and say hello?
See what she looks
Well, another thing I would have probably would have mentioned as well is Emma's actually currently now in the head of prevention and has sort of neighbourhood policing as an area of expertise as well. So it's a really good thing to be bringing, I think, into this area. So I just want to start. I think I'll start with the obvious, and that is around the fact that Devon and Cornwall is still engaged with Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary. So I think previously, that was around 3 things. It was how they were managing call handling and how the management of some of our high-risk offenders. Well, those 2 aspects are no longer in engage. So they are now satisfied that the progress made around the non-urgent calls and predominantly around the 999 calls and been taken on a much better place. The area that still remains in engage is around crime data integrity. But in truth, if you came and looked at our area and looked at the audits that are happening up here, we're in a much, much better place. And the Fort as a whole is a better place. The bit that's a newer element, which is causing some concern, is around crime investigations and how those are being managed. And there's some work that I suspect will still need to be done. I think the good thing is, I think all of you here know that there has been some level of instability at the top of the organisation with two chiefs in the last sort of 18 months. We have now got Chief Constable James Vaughan. He's been up here a couple of times, I've met him a couple of times, and I think that's going to bring a lot of stability to Devon and Cornwall as a whole. So just for Torridge, more specifically, staffing, I'm not going to stand here and say it's not challenging, because it's a rural patch. Your area is as big as some forces in the rest of England and Wales. And albeit, yes, it's true, we have more officers now than we've ever had. But it is a challenge sometimes with the changing of policing and the priorities, is to have those teams, those people in the right place. And a couple of areas that more recently that have been a little bit of a struggle. I know we've got district members here, Holsworthy and Torrington. Torrington just lost a couple of PCSOs who quite suddenly decided that they were going to move on, which they perfectly entitled to do so. The good news is a PCSO has just started mentoring in Torrington, and I'm hopeful we might have another one in the pipeline. In Holsworthy, we have just moved in the last couple of weeks another post from somewhere else in the organisation to now come into Holsworthy. And I don't know the Holsworthy reps, I can't see where they are at the moment, but you've also got the tri-service officer. And I think some of you may have met, this is a police, fire and SWAS ambulance, a little bit of everything. And that's been planted in Cornwall and is now established in Holsworthy. And hopefully we can, that will grow across the whole patch. The more medium term good news is there are two things in force which I think will lead to seeing more staff in the right place. Number one is there's a senior rank review. And if you came and asked me, do you want more bosses in Devon and Cornwall next to me, or do you want more people beneath me doing the work and doers? I'll tell you exactly what the answer is. Quite simply, we need more people on the ground doing, not people leading necessarily. You need leaders, but not necessarily volume. There is a rank review being agreed between the chief and the PCC, and the ultimate aim is to return 60 more PCs without actually getting more officers. That makes sense. So we're going to reduce the ranks. The other really big good news is around the government funding is for Devon and Cornwall of 4.7 million. Now, we've heard these things before where the funding comes in. What's different about this is the government have made it absolutely clear, and I totally support this and get this, it's ring-fenced the neighbourhood to NBMs and PCSOs. They have to see that 4.7 million turning into an increase in NBMs, neighbour beat managers, and police community support officers. So I keep using that, and tell me off if I'm doing that. So neighbour beat managers and PCSOs. So that's a real opportunity. And I think when Emma takes over to then discuss where we think that uplift that will come to this area, where we think that we're going to get most bang for our buck here with those extra resources. And there's still that natural turnover. The next 3 months, we've still got another 8 or 9 students that are coming into the area as well. So there has been some challenges on this patch, in particular the 2 locations I've talked about, but there is better news ahead. So performance-wise, crime still sits at one of the lowest in the UK per head of population, per 1,000. Devon and Cornwall is second lowest in the country as a force. We are the lowest within Devon and Cornwall. So the truth is, we're still doing a really good job. And I say we, it's not just about policing. It's about you, as elected members, our communities, it's the council, everybody. There's a really good partnership feel up here, and it does make a difference. Are we perfect? No. Are the councillors are going to happily tell me about the things that where we're imperfect? I'm sure you will. So there is still work to be done, but we are still in a good place. The bit that I'm really proud of, and I was sharing with North Devon District last week, is around our outcome rates. I don't know what you call it, clear up rate, detection rate, whatever you call it. But if somebody is reporting a crime, the priority has to be to catch the person responsible and put them through the justice system. And here, and I'll go back to the HMRC concerns around investigation standards, in Northern Devon, we have one of the highest outcome rates in the country. We have our outcome rate, if you sit and look at that across the rest of the force, is higher, but particularly high when it comes to some of the more concerning crime types. And violence against women and girls, domestic abuse is one of those areas that obviously the priority from not only within the community, but right up to the Home Office. We put more staff into specialist domestic abuse investigation and safeguarding teams. 33% of the violent crime in your patch is behind closed doors in a domestic environment. That's the reality. It's not out in the streets. That's the percent. It's always, most of it is happening behind closed doors. And our outcome rate for domestic abuse last 3 months, double that of the rest of the force. And if you looked at some of the best forces in the country, we're exceeding that. So I say it because it's my teams that are doing the work. And if anyone who's worked in police, you understand policing, it's not just hours of work, it's not days, this is weeks of work that you do there to pull that evidence and present all of that to court. And for me, nothing better than safeguarding a victim in these situations is catch the perpetrator and make them take responsibility for what they've done. That's how you then also stop that stuff from happening again. And for you as councillors, please, every time there's one report of domestic abuse, the statistics say there was 30 other cases that don't get reported, even with that same individual. And for you as councillors, please, it's going out there, spread the message, we need that stuff to be reported. There's so many people out there who don't report, who just tolerate it, accept it, and we need to encourage come forward because we will do a good job for them. The other area that I've talked about with you previously is antisocial behaviour and sort of safer streets, because I know that it may be talked about as low level, but persistent ASB, anti-behaviour and crime, does have a big impact on communities, and that sort of perception and feeling of safety when you just see the same old stuff and people getting away with it. And that neighbour beats him up, as I talked about, fantastic, that will certainly help, but we can't tackle it alone. And I've been here before and said, policing cannot tackle ASB, it needs the work of communities, partners, councils, all of us, parents, schools. We all got to work to address loads of this. Some of the highlights, the APCC, the PCC, Alison Fernandez had secured the hotspot policing funding. The good news is, I think as a council you're probably aware, that is now going to be extended. And Bideford is one of the locations that is being treated. It's all based on data that it's going to have, again, more officers on overtime, and it's going to extend the street marshals. And from my understanding of those that have been in Bideford, that has made a real difference. Certainly in terms of reported crime and ASB, there have been significant pulls, and the visibility that's being seen in Townsend does make a difference. And it's simple, just stick people, it's not rocket science, stick people where the problems are. If they're there for 15 minutes in a day, the reality is it sustains the lower levels of crime and ASB for the rest of that day when there's been a lot of it being present. And the other stuff around the rest of the patch, we are robustly targeting repeat ASB, repeat offenders, community protection notices with the work of the district as well, criminal behaviour orders, which would meant that some of your individuals are not even allowed on your patch at all. And we've got the escalation process around ASBs that to evictions of a number of individuals on your patch. It makes a difference, but again, it's all about working in partnership. And as Torres District Council, I can't on my final meeting not just want to make mention of the fact that having the CCTV, having that presence, having that visible and direct link to the police is making a difference. And so the street marshals as well, the community safety officers you've got, they do make a real difference. Again, report it. How many times do I come to a situation where people say, massive issue, we've got the system and there's nothing there? If there's nothing reported, then as far as we're concerned, we can't evidence it happening. So my final thing, I've got the watch being flicked at me, so I will be 2 minutes, I promise. I've gone on, it's totally my natural instinct. So in council, some of the district councils will be coming to me and raising concerns about the parish. Councils have on their agenda police reports and attend at the parish council meetings, and I get it. It's probably still got agendas that link to times of old. I've got 100+ parishes across my patch, I can't realistically send an officer to everyone. And equally, the newsletter being meaningful to each one is a lot more difficult. The bigger ones, absolutely, and we have got a kind of a grading system as to where there's an expectation that officers should attend. But what's most important for me is going to be, how do you get hold of your local team? Do your parish councils know who their local officer is and their local PCSO is? Do they know how to get on the system and raise an issue? If there is an issue, call us, ask us to come to that meeting. Absolutely right that we would then attend. If it's an AGM, but please, here's my plea, council advocate scheme. The council advocates meet my inspectors across the patch every quarter. So if you want your parishes want to have that level of contact with their local inspector, become a council advocate, and then you can have the direct ear of our inspectors as well. So there is a bit more work I was going to share. I won't do it. That is more about how we're going to work through some of those newsletters, but we will send out some to parishes around expectations of what they can expect. Because I know that you are getting the brunt of it at meetings, but I will conclude by saying thank you. It's a very special area that we live and work in, and most of us live and work and socialise in our area. But I think it's that kind of care and compassion for the patch that we're all on that makes a real difference. And I would say thank you to everybody, because it's been good whilst it lasts. Thank you.
Thank you. The two speakers are ready. Councillor Hackett first of all, then Councillor Brenton.
Thank you, Chair, and it remains for me to thank you, Toby. We've worked very well together on the CSP for a number of years now, and to welcome Emma in your place. There are a couple of things that I would like to raise and clarify. Hotspot policing, I welcome the news that's been extended for a further year. We have actually asked that the Police and Crime Commissioner, Alison Hernandez, come up and visit us, and it's a long-standing invitation, and I'm hoping that she will attend fairly shortly, because one of the major issues we have in Bideford is the level of shoplifting. A couple of years ago, it was rated at about £250,000 for our major stores alone in Bideford. And that is a figure that is completely unsustainable for our high streets. So we would like her to come up and meet with councillors and also traders to discuss how we're going to address this. The second issue I have is gun licenses. I've been made aware of a number of farmers who use guns in the normal working practices they have, either for humane killing or for vermin. In one instance, one long-standing holder of a license of 50 years was asked to submit his request for his new license. He did so. He didn't hear anything until the armed police unit contacted him to say that they needed an extension. That extension expired, and he was told to lodge his firearms at his own expense with a reputable dealer. He's had to have the cost of vermin and humane killing done at his own expense. I raised this with Geoffrey Cox at a farmers' meeting, which was attended by about 30 people a fortnight ago. And lo and behold, about 7 people in that room said they'd had similar problems. Could you bring your influence to bear to try and chase this up? I know there's reasons of security, of what has happened in places like Caham, but where we have farmers who need these for legitimate purposes, it is an essential tool of their trade. I'd welcome a response on that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ms. Hackett, for kind words, and somehow you've managed to thread 3 questions in there, Bill. I'll come. The first bit is, if you invite the Police Crime Commissioner, I'd be very surprised if she doesn't look to put that in the diary. She comes up to Northern Devon quite regularly, in honesty. So put that formal request in again. It may have got lost in the, there were lots of things that have been happening over the last 12 months. Shoplifting, as you probably know, has become much more national attention around shoplifting. There was something in the media last week around new processes, around reporting. We're trying to streamline the processes to make it much more easy to report. And be really clear, there are parts of the country where if it's over or under a certain value, they don't prosecute, don't deal. That we do not apply that. If there's a shoplifting, theft in store, and we've got the evidence, we will progress and we will deal. But it does come back to, on this way, speak to you and see the inspector. It does come back to working with the trade as well, because what we want to do first and utmost is stop it happening in the first place, prevent, make it much more difficult for people to steal from the store. Your last point, the gun license. Look, we had a chat in the margins. We can't apologise for the fact that there is a lot more rigour around licensing after what's happened, and that's happening nationally after what happened in Plymouth. That's understandable. I am told there's no backlog, and clearly, if it's job related, it will always be prioritised above anybody and everybody else. You'd have to share the individual situation when we film, send it over to me, and we'll have to have a look, because what I can't say is I can't tell you what the reasons are behind why that might be more difficult. There may be, people don't always know necessarily what it is that may be preventing them from getting that licence back, but we don't. It's a lot more difficult than it used to be to get a licence, which I think is a good thing if it's the right reason. So, but yeah, it's a point taken, and it has been raised by others as well.
Very briefly, Philip, because the other people want to speak.
Thank you, I should do that. I've had 3 bites of the cherry, so I've obviously, I've learned something in the last 10 years.
Councillor Brandon?
Thank you, Chair. I want to discuss the topic of road rage. Is that on the increase in this area? Due to family circumstances, we now have to drive nearly 1,000 miles a week. And I have noticed an increase in road rage. We do get a lot of abuse, especially on roundabouts, even in this area. And it is a form of antisocial behaviour. It does escalate, as you well know. Have you had increased incidents of it? And if so, what do you do about it? And finally, I would add, what's going to happen to Bideford Police Station? Is that ever going to open again?
Well, 2 questions there. Right, I'll go. It's not the latter. So first of all, I think you as a council, I came to you here before. I suggested you might want to push and recommend Bideford be one of those. As you know, lots of front offices have been opening, but the public inquiry office around the whole force. There are challenges around this state as well, which I won't share. It's a bit more complicated, but I would have said that Bideford would welcome and would be right. But at the next round, if they do have a next round, but it's the Police and Crime Commission's call. It's entirely up there. So that would be something you might want to write back in again if there's a new round of openings. I'll be honest, the way it works, my inspectors meet their sergeants. We have weekly, what we call tasking meetings. We identify patterns, problems, issues, constant ASB somewhere, repeat crime. Road rage hasn't been something that's been picked up. It's not saying it doesn't happen. It does happen, obviously, but not that there's been a particular spike or increase. We have had a couple of incidents, quite nasty incidents that happened, but that's, as you probably pointed out, not necessarily unusual. If there's one you've got in particular you're worried about, or about something that we can or should have dealt with, then just share that with me afterwards in the margins. But yeah.
Hey, Chair. Do you have a cyber security expert or officer? Because I've been watching a YouTube farmer up country, and he's Liverpool, Manchester direction, and they had a cyber security or specialist officer actually come around and attend farmers to try and get farmers to engage in protecting their online side of things, because obviously with the likes of the tractors becoming more autonomous and the dome links and everything, and also they're saying with Labour government's attack on farmers with the inheritance tax is raising the profile, and they're more afraid of like the simple things of all the collars on all the dairy cows and that they can be hacked into and altered to feed and increase farmers' costs and everything. And so they've got an officer going around to the farmers talking to them about more awareness of their security online and all that. I didn't know if we have that down here as well.
Well, do you know what? You are super lucky, because I'm probably going because I am no cybersecurity expert, but we have got cybersecurity experts. We have rural crime experts, and the person who's responsible for them now is sat behind me and is about to become your new commander. So if you want to have the teams coming in and because there's lots of stuff they do, the rural affairs team, and with the neighbourhood officers as well, is to go out there and give that advice. And I don't know if there's anything that you necessarily have running now, but I
Yeah,
don't
we
think.
do, yes, we do have cyber, so that very point is really prevalent at the moment. The Rural Affairs team are kind of all over it. So there's a regional op rag walk that's running, which is us working with regional colleagues to, it runs kind of across the region. Devon and Cornwall is in September, but it's ongoing work all the time, looking at that intelligence feed, looking at travelling criminals coming into the area for that exact reason. And then the Rural Affairs team are going out, giving that crime prevention advice, working with the cybersecurity team, equally to try and prevent that as well, because we know it's a really big issue at the moment. So, by all means, I can share details and make sure that if you've got a particular farm or rural property that's causing an issue, then we can make that contact and get them out to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, good question.
Right, I've got one more speaker and then we must move on because it's been nearly half hour on this topic. Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Toby. Just wanted to thank you for the positive news about PCSO in Holsworthy. Towns like Holsworthy can sometimes feel a little bit isolated. We are lucky to have low levels of crime in instances, and we have low levels in severity, I think, as well. But I just wanted to stress the importance of the function of PCSO. I've sat on Holsworthy Town Council for about 10 years, and over those 10 years, we've had some really, really good relationships with our PCSO, and it has made a real difference. Like I say, it tends to be low levels of crime, but it's those low levels of crime in towns like Holsworthy, it can sometimes just bubble and get out of hand. And the PCSO and their communication with the town council especially. I was a town councillor who actually said to our PCSO once that, you know, are you better off? You sound like a busy man, are you better off out doing stuff and talking, wasting your time in the bus? But actually it's more to do with that day-to-day connection. And then occasionally coming to a council meeting for 10 minutes, having a chat, and it just establishes those links. So I just wanted to stress the importance and thank you for the work you're doing to, you know, get a PCSO more stationed in Holsworthy.
Yeah, you've got a tri-service officer. It what's really what PCSOs are is if one goes, it takes time to get somebody in, recruit, train them up. And as you say, if you've got that, their role is to engage with the council, because I've always been an advocate. If you keep the council and the councillors on board, you generally keep the community on board. If you lose your councillors, you tend to lose the community behind it as well. So it's in our best interest to work really closely with you. The way we're probably going to move it, because it's really complicated, is that we might end up having cluster PCSOs between Torrington and Holsworthy, so that they could spend 3 days in Holsworthy, 2 days in Torrington, so that we don't see one having nothing and the other having. So we're just trying to play around with what we've got. But you have got the new tri-service officer, and she I don't think we've met her yet, but I'll make sure that she comes to the next parish council, town council meeting, because she's really good, really good.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's up to me, Toby, to offer the thanks of the whole of the district council for the years of dedicated service that you've provided to not just North Devon, but the Torridge as well. I think, you know, it's been an exceptional period, and I expect you've enjoyed it, but you're probably even more looking forward to your years of retirement. So
I have indeed. But do you know, the good news is I live on the wrong side of the river, but Emma lives on the right side of the river, so it's a Torridge. So look, you've got a Torridge commander there. So
well done.
next.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, you see on your agenda, item 8 has been moved to the next meeting. This was the presentation from Royal North Devon Hospital University Trust, so that's been deferred to the next meeting. So we'll move on then to item 9, local government reorganisation, to receive an update from the chief executive. And there is a supplement provided for you.
Thank you, Chair. So it's an update from myself and the leader of the council. So first of all, apologies from us both for the lateness of the report. I know it only came out this afternoon. However, it's been quite fast moving. Things are changing day to day. As you'll note from the report, there's still information and clarification coming in on Friday. I think the leader and I, between us, together, have had somewhere in the region of 50 to 60 meetings over the course of the week since January on local government reorganisation alone. So what we've been doing is keeping group leaders up to date Also, we had a member briefing the other week just to bring all members up to speed with events. So just running through the report, I'll just pick up a summary if you like. So you recall we came to full council at the beginning of January, following the English devolution white paper being published just before Christmas. Since then, on the 5th of February, we had a letter from the Minister of State setting out the invitation to all two-tier areas across England, inviting proposals for local government reorganisation. And in that letter, setting out a timetable. The first deadline being this Friday, which obviously isn't a great deal of time to prepare proposals on such a significant change. You'll note from that meeting in January, amongst other things, you supported a proposal that a single unitary council for Devon isn't the right solution. Recognising the government's ambitions for reorganisation, but more importantly, finally, delegating the leader and myself to continue to work with other Devon district leaders and chief execs over the course of the last 2 months to try and finalise an interim proposal. At that point in January, we didn't have any details of what that proposal might look like, what it was meant to contain, nor did we have at that time the date. So, setting out on the third page or page 3 of the addendum, the information we received on Friday sets out a couple of pertinent points, recognising it's entirely up to each area how they wish to present their initial thinking on interim plans, and I'll stress the point of being interim plans, recognising that there's a lot more work to do between now and a final submission in November. Government recognises that each area across the country is at different stages, in different places in developing proposals. Some areas will have already been thinking about reorganisation before the government submitted this invitation. It's a government's preference that each area submits one proposal. Now, I guess I'm presuming you're already all aware that there's more proposals being submitted for the Devon area. We know that Plymouth published their proposals the end of last week. Devon County Council have just issued their agenda for Thursday, which contains a number of options, and Exeter will meet on Thursday evening, also signalling a different proposal for the Exeter City region. So we know for a fact that there'll be more than one proposal for the area. The key point, I think, for this March deadline is that it's not a decision point for the government. The government won't be deciding one or two or any others to take forward. It's a process for them just simply understand what discussions have been taken place in an area and what the thoughts of reorganisation should be. Obviously, there's been much talk about the levels and size of unitary councils. You'll all be aware of the figure of 500,000, a figure that was set out in the minister's letter. Since then, it's become clear that's not a hard number. Proposals can be above or below that figure, depending on the business case and the rationale for change and the rationale for that unitary proposals. As I said, the leader and I have had many meetings with Devon district leaders and chief execs over the course of the weeks, and there is some consensus among the 7 district leaders, including the leader of Torbay, and that consensus is circulated around a model of 145, which I'm sure you will have seen and heard about. So that's based on Plymouth retaining unitary status, as shown in yellow on the map, and creating 2 new unitary councils for the remainder of Devon. So one set with Exeter, East Devon, Mid Devon, North Devon and ourselves being the 5, and the 4 being Teambridge, Torbay, South Hams, West Devon, and Plymouth retaining its current identity. So that's based on a piece of work that we've been able to do in such a short space of time. Obviously, there isn't time capacity to have considered many other options, and I'm sure around the table you might be thinking, well, surely there are other options. As I said, this first stage isn't a decision time for the government, and should the data, the evidence suggest that we need and should be looking at other models, then that can be changed, that can be adapted in the period between now and November. So some of that you'll see has been set out in the Minister's letter, which is on Appendix 1, and on Schedule 1D sets out that your proposal needs to consider what the arrangements are for the entire area. So if we decided, or you decided, we would just want a single unitary for ourselves, notwithstanding all the other criteria, you'd still have to think about the rest of the Devon area. So you can't just put something forward for yourself, or a combination of 1 or 2 other district councils. You have to submit something that covers the entire area. So that's the work that's been done at pace at this stage, and you'll see the recommendations are set out on page 5 and 6 of the addendum. The other thing worthy of noting, again, setting up unitary councils, preparing business cases isn't a cheap feast. It's estimated that each business case proposal will cost somewhere between 100 and 150,000. Clearly, working in partnership and collaboration with others, that cost can be shared. Clearly, if you work on your own and submit something yourself, then you pay that cost yourself. The other thing I think I said was, obviously, any proposal submitted now can be changed should members wish to do so at a later stage during the course of the year. I think at that point, I'll hand you over to the leader.
I'm not sure how much more to add to that. Well, we've been sat discussing this into Toby. I've has been flashing all sorts of comments that have come out, because we've only heard tonight what Devon County's proposal are or is, and we've only just had a response from Exeter, so it is quite difficult at the moment. I think the thing about it is that we were asked to show, just to do an expression of interest of how we work, and as the Chief Executive said, it relies on the whole of Devon. It's not just what we want, it's how what we want fits into the whole of Devon. So obviously, I've been quite pleased and quite surprised how well all the district leaders have worked together to come to where we are. None of us are pretending that the 154 is going to be probably the ultimate submission, or it's the correct submission, but we've had just a couple of weeks to do an expression of interest. So that we've all come together. It's quite surprising and pleasing that Torbay decided to join with the districts, although they have got a submission of their own. They've actually signed up to the one with the other district leaders as well. So we are where we are. We need to get to what we need is the statistics and all the figures that will formulate the final submission for November. That's not been easy to get. There's been some resistance by one area to part with the details that the districts need, but we've got that now. And also, whilst I know there's people talking about the 500 is too big, and there was discussion so about a smaller area, But what we've got to bear in mind with northern Devon, and probably some of the other areas, is you're talking about a massive road structure. You're talking about adult care, you're talking about childcare. You know, all these things have already probably embarrassed Devon County in the sheer cost of it all and the lack of support they've had from the government over the years to provide that. So it's not a simple thing of, we would like as North Devon to be doing our own thing, but it's got to be by November, a really thought through figure. And as Chief Exec said, we're talking about quite a lot of cost in this. And at the moment, I think that where we are with the leaders and makes no difference really, but 5 are Lib Dems and 2 are independents. And obviously Exeter is Labour-led as is Plymouth. But we've come to this 154 as just a starting point to start gathering all the information we need. It's going to cost money, and we're probably going to have to come back to you asking for a contribution, hopefully a contribution to a combined proposal, because if we come back saying, well, college is going to go on its own, well, A, you're looking at an awful lot of money, and B, it doesn't fulfil the government's proposal that we show how Devon are all working together. I don't think that's going to be easy, but I think there will have to be some compromises to get to that stage. So at this moment in time, I would just ask you to note the 3 the report on progress made, which highlighted in the report of 21st of March 2005. Deadline for instruments of submission to the government as required by the Minister's letter of 5th of February. But much of the work that is required between March and November, when the final proposed and business case is due for submission. And note that the model 145 proposed in this report, which can be changed and probably will be changed, but it is a starting point, it's an expression of interest to produce a full business case of LGR for Devon. And the one there note, the approval I ask for is that you delegate the leader and the chief exec to submit the interim proposal submitted on by the 21st of March, which is Friday, based on the 154 model as a starting point, how we work with the other districts. And it may be we all fall out and all do our own thing, but at the moment, I'm pleasantly surprised there is certainly I've got 7 stones. So that's where we are. So if I could ask for a proposal, well, I'll propose from here, but you don't, I can't, no. I'll ask for a proposal. Right, so you've heard Councillor James, the leader, run through the proposal. That we delegate to the leader and the chief executive to submit the interim proposal to be submitted by the 21st of March, based on the 145 model. Councillor Hackett.
Happy to propose, Chair.
Councillor Locke seconded. Okay, all in favour, please show.
Sorry, I want to speak.
Oh, sorry, did you?
Yeah.
Didn't see your hand up.
Say something.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I really appreciate what our leader, Ken James, has been doing over the last few months, with countless meetings with other councils to come to some sort of agreement on what those councils want to put forward to government. However, I still can't accept the whole principle and basis of what the government is proposing. And I suspect a large number of the public will not accept it either. 500,000 population and a proposal for half of Devon to be a unitary authority with Torridge, to me is just not acceptable. It wouldn't be workable, it wouldn't be democratic, it would involve huge costs to this council. But having heard what has been said by Steve Hurst and Ken James, it's difficult to know how to sort of proceed with this. We've been told we have to work with other councils in Devon by the government. We've been told all sorts of things by the government. It's all being imposed. There's no electoral mandate from this government for what's being proposed. So I just find it sort of, centralisation and enforcement from a national government, really. I have drafted a proposal, an alternative proposal. Whether it will get support, I don't know. I fully recognise, as I've said, what we've just been told, that we have to fit in with other councils. Ideally, I would go for, if I, I'm sure, I think other members would agree with me that we should have much smaller authorities, so we should have come to some sort of arrangement of like six authorities, unitaries, if we're going to have to put proposals to government. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't, we should just dip out. I realise that we have to be in a position where we have to come up with something, but to me, dividing Devon into two unitaries is just not acceptable. I've drafted a proposal saying the council is concerned about the government's requirement that unitary authorities should serve a minimum of 500,000 people in rural counties with sparsely distributed populations such as Devon. These authorities will be far too large to democratically represent communities and to allow for the distances which would need to be travelled by councillors, the public and officers in order to provide and access services and attend meetings. Furthermore, the benefits of such large authorities are as yet unproven and have not been subject to public scrutiny. Given these concerns, a combination of Torridge and North Devon councils to form a smaller unitary authority makes more sense, and it's proposed that this possibility should be investigated with full public consultation. Whether I'll get a seconder for that, I don't know, having what we've been told, but it's basically, I think we need to flag up this as an idea, as an alternative, really, because of, these proposals of such huge authorities is just not on for me. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, councillor Tinsley was first and then councillor Thomas.
Yes, I mean, I've got, I agree that 500,000 is too large. And what I saw in the latest thing that's come through on the 14th of March is that they're talking about options plural. And also I hear what you've said, Councillor James and the Chief Executive has said, that this is not going to be the final version, but I am worried that we keep seeing this this picture and it's going to get stuck in the system. We're going to be stuck with it when nobody really thinks it's actually a very good way to divide up the country. So how are we going to prevent, because you need to get on with the work that you need to do, how are we going to prevent it getting stuck in the system and make sure that we can look at other alternatives? Because I think a north-south division, for example, would make a lot more sense with I think sort of culturally, and a north-south would focus on the rural areas in the north and not suck the strength out of Bideford and Barnstaple, where we've already got councils existing. So what I would suggest is that this council gives a steer to you to look at a range of other options and not simply go with the 154, but to say, and there will be other options that need considering. And I've also got a question, because you say in the report that there'll be further public consultation and so on, and I'd like to know what that would be. Probably haven't got details yet.
Thank you, councillor Tinsley. Consultation that will follow on hopefully later on in this year, although the government's not been clear, as I understand it, Chief Executive correctly, exactly when consultation will. In terms of the north-south split, when you think about it, most of the money's in the south, and we in the north are still asking to be a unitary, to do adult care, childcare, maintain the biggest network of roads. Our business rate collection will be relatively small compared to the south. So basically, that option is basically one that will fail. I'm sorry, but if I'm going to be blunt and honest, which is what I tend to do, if you take out, if you put the south and put Plymouth and Exeter and all that, where all the growth is, where all the money is, but what you've got to bear in mind is the original proposal for Devon County was a one unitary of the whole of Devon. What we've done as districts is try to look at how we can come up with an alternative to try and keep district, county and districts are going. The question then is, and probably looking at the map is the wrong way round, looking at how we deliver the services for our people in the area is probably the right way to look at it. But then when you do that, you have to ask, how are you going to finance those services? And if you become a very rural area without business rates, with low population, how do you service for the northern half of Devon, one of the biggest road networks in the probably the country, or certainly within the area? How are you going to manage adult care? And we know with all the money that's gone into Devon County, they've still not been able to make it balance. So I'm sorry, it's been looked at, you know, every option's been looked at, and this is a starting point. And there is an element of putting the max first is perhaps the wrong way round, but somehow you've got to decide how to do it. And, you know, as I said before, 6 of the districts are going with that. 1 or 2 are tinkering, but there will be time once we adopt this and move forward to look at, we need the statistics, the travel to work, the education population, the healthcare situation, all that sort of stuff's got to be taken into the final assessment that goes into November. We haven't had that detail. It hasn't come out of county, it hasn't come from NHS yet. So until you get all that, you can't really start looking at how you're going to balance it. What we've done is moved away from county wanting one unitary for the whole of Devon, and looked at how the districts, bearing in mind they won't exist, what we can do for the people of that area. Now, I would love just to be Northern Devon, and we've got a lot going on in Bideford, there's stuff going in Barnstaple, but have we got the expertise? Have we got the money to deliver adult care? We've got quite an elderly population here. We're already classes deprivation, Ilfracombe's classes deprivation. And all the money, if you went north south, would be concentrated in the south. So I think this is a really good starting point of where we go forward. All we've been asked to do is submit an expression of interest by Friday. We haven't got all the detail. This is what we've done, and at the moment, we're working with the other districts. Once we move away from working with other districts, we're not fulfilling what the government wants. The 500,000, that may change, depending on what happens with the others. But we don't know at this stage. At this stage, we've got to meet the Friday deadline. I think start chopping and changing now and coming up with other solutions, which we will have to work on and will cost us a great deal of money and probably not get looked at anyway. There is always the option that come November, the government will tell us no matter what we're doing. So
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
Well, I think I'm getting sort of mixed messages here, because it said, you say this is not necessarily going to be the final option, but then you say that you've already looked at other options and they're not viable. So I'm a bit confused, really.
Sorry, I'm not saying other options aren't viable.
No.
We've looked at other options and they will be looked at again once we get all the detail. At the moment, the other leaders, and it's not just my decision, it's 7, and we've had quite an interesting email from from Exeter tonight, who threw their toys out the pram a little bit, and they sounds like they don't quite know what to do. So, well, I'm not saying this is right, I'm not saying it's going to change. I'm just asking to move forward for Friday.
I'll ask the chief executive. So just on the consultation bit, just touch about that. So we expect there would be two phases of consultation. The first, as we move through this year into November, because you'd want your final business case to be backed with some form of public consultation. Then following the November submission, at that point, the government will decide what's then taken forward for formal consultation as a preferred option or options. So that's one bit. And I think the leader touched on, this isn't a process we'd start this way around and try to do this quickly. I think and just draw maps draw lines on a map as the first stage. You wouldn't do that in ordinary circumstances. This is kind of based on the minister's letter. So the minister's letter set out 500,000, set out sticking to boundaries. So that's all of that starts to restrict you. So when we've got a population excluding Plymouth of 900,000 and 500,000 was in the letter, there's only two ways you can split that. Only two options. So that's kind of where it's come from. And I know Councillor Hames was talking about democratic representation. That's certainly something the leaders have been discussing. If you look at the Boundary Commission model, it talks of between 4,500 and 5,000 electors per councillor, which is significantly different to our current model. Now, that's the Boundary Commission's model, but that's not something that necessarily needs to be stuck with. That's something that would come out through further consultation and further analysis. So when you look at the map there, you can see there's very limited data sitting behind that. It's business rate data, council tax data, and population. As we were developing this model, that's the only information that was available at the time. As Councillor James mentioned, we're only starting to get sight and access to the more critical data around the upper tier authority services, adult social care, children's social care, and special education needs. Those key service areas, we're only now starting to see some of that information, and it'll only be over the coming months that we'll be able to see actual data that can be disaggregated and reaggregated into another model. And it's that data we need to focus on to drive what a new council looks like, because it's got to be sustainable. The government said it's got to be sustainable to financial shocks. Any unitary council that you decide to set up can't be at the detriment of the rest of the area. So there's lots of permutations that need to be taken into account when developing the proposals. And as I said, have to take the whole area into account as well. I guess the final point to make, I know Councillor Tinsey was talking about steering us in a direction, that's fine. But the key point now is if we don't submit anything, we'll be out of the game, and other people will decide what happens to Torridge, and we won't be part of that process. So this, at the moment, as Councillor Jones, is the best that's been able to be produced in a very short space of time with very limited data and information. But as the leader said, it's a starting point.
Councillor Thomas, next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I share some of Councillor Tinsley's concerns that just by having this, it run the risk that it'll become a fait accompli. I've had a lot of talk about, mentions of expression of interest. I'm not interested in this at all. I don't think it is going to represent the people of this area. And we talked about the elector numbers. I mean, 542,000, even if you had 100 councillors, you're going to have, 5,400 people per councillor. That's not democratic, not compared to what we've got now. I mean, we've got 36 councillors here. I think we've got less than 2,000 electors each to represent, and that's not even including the county councillors. So this whole proposal is just scrapping layers of democracy. By the way, I would like to second councillor Haynes's proposal. We've also heard mention of the fact that we need to have authorities of 500,000 or large numbers. Well, maybe that might be what the government want. That's their preference. It's not something we have to do. There have been a whole range of unitaries of different sizes, from the Orkneys and Shetland, which have populations of like 22,000 or something, which are run as unitary authorities. The Isle of Wight, 148,000, I think it is, smaller than Torridge and North Devon combined, which I know that's probably going to merge with Hampshire, but it's operated quite independently for quite a long time. I just can't support this proposal. I'm sorry. I can't see it working. I don't think it's democratic.
Councillor Cockle-Hunter.
So I do want to thank our leader for all the work that he's done. He said 50 or 60 meetings since January. That is a lot of time spent on this local government reorganisation. And that's, yeah, so thank you for that. For this expression of interest. I think we're all really frustrated. None of us really want this. It's something that's been imposed on us. And we're all frustrated at the rapid timescales. That appears to be what it comes down to. The speed that we're expected to come up with this proposal is just absolutely ridiculous. And that's all comes from central government. So it's not our fault here in Devon. We're being told we have to come up with this in just a matter of weeks or months. And I just think we need to sort of tell people that it would be much better to look at a plan that could evolve over time, because will have such a big impact on the whole of our county and our district. We should be looking at opportunities to integrate services across boundaries and districts. So we could share officers, and this is already happening in Torridge and North Devon. So looking at opportunities that arise where we could share services and share officers, which would make a lot more sense, but without the rapid change that is expected from us at the moment. If we were given the ability to evolve over a longer timescale, we could save tens of millions of pounds of taxpayers' money, which could be spent on things such as education, roads and housing, which are much more important and need urgent attention here in Devon. That's something that I think we all feel passionately about. We're trying to improve the area for everybody, and local government reorganisation was never something that we ever expected to happen, and not one of our priorities here. The bottom-up approach would reduce the turmoil of this rapid reorganisation. I think we all think it's a real shame our government are imposing this on us. I would think there are much more important national issues too that they should be focusing on, national and global issues. I wonder if we should send a letter alongside the expression of interest to this effect. It's something that I don't think that we support as a council. We're just going through with this because it's been told, something that we've been told we have to come up with. So I would propose sending something to that effect alongside the expression of interest. If there's a second.
Right, well, you've heard the original proposal, which was proposed by Councillor Hackett, I believe, and seconded by Councillor Locke. So as that was the first motion, we'll take that vote first. So all those in support of the recommendation in the report, please show. Against? Abstentions?
It's 24 for, 4 against and 2 abstentions, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. That's clearly carried on. Thank you. Item 10 on your agenda, Peer Challenge Action Plan update. Received an update from the leader and the chief executive.
I'll make a quick start if you like, and then hand over to the leader later. So, members will, of course, remember that we had a LGA peer review almost a year ago now, back in April 2024, on site. And we had the team is set out there on page 2 of your report. During the course of the year, then we brought back to full council the recommendations from the peer review team in the form of an action plan. And that action plan is attached to your agenda with the relevant updates. So group leaders have been meeting at various stages to oversee that action plan delivery. And of course, some of that is delegated through changes that need to be made that will come forward to you at your annual general meeting. So the main items, I guess, for update, obviously the level, what was formerly known as Levelling Up Partnership, formed a significant part and recommendation to the action plan, principally in terms of capacity and the ability to deliver such an ambitious and large programme alongside the other work we are doing. But as members will know, that Community Regeneration Partnership has only just been announced, but notwithstanding that, some work had been done with group leaders in developing the governance arrangements around overseeing major projects, and that governance report and oversight will be brought back to full council with those changes. So there's been some work done on member development, there were procedures. Again, they'll be brought forward for your consideration, fuller consideration at the AGM. So some of the things you will already have seen happen. So we no longer meet as a leadership team. You have member briefings already in your diary. We've had a couple, so they're every other month. And the last one we had was 2 weeks ago when we talked about local government reorganisation and the housing strategy. I won't talk about the housing strategy because that's on your agenda for later this evening. So there's a number of other things. So the Golden Triangles, the meetings between Peter, Stacey and I are now all scheduled and take place every month. The member budget working group has continued, although probably not as originally intended. Was intended that representation from each of the political groups is on that group. It hasn't worked like that. And again, that's for discussion at the next working group meeting. Climate change, obviously there's a recommendation to update business plans and make it clear in business plans our commitment. And again, that's being done. Things around HR policy, something was brought up. They're all now approved, agreed with the unions and have been implemented. On communications, again, a range of improvements have been put in place over the course of the last year. Still some work to be done on member communications. Again, that's due to be discussed at the Member Development Working Group on the 4th of April. So, Chair, the appendix to the report highlights all the changes that have been made and indicates the status of each of those recommendations, whether they're red, where things haven't been done, amber, where things are in progress but still to be done, and green, where they've been completed. Member Development Working Group meeting again on the 4th of April to conclude our final position before the peer review team come and meet with us and with members again on the 10th of April. And there will be an invite, if that's not already gone out, for all members to attend a session on that Thursday, the 10th of April. The reports for noting, but I don't know whether the leader, Councillor James, has anything to add.
I think you can say. not a lot really. I think, you know, the member development is working. We're having these meetings with the other group leaders. On the budget working group, it has faded slightly, and we need to address that as to whether we still stick with one member from each political group or whether we go to two members, so that there's always somebody there from each political group. I will thank Councillor Haynes, who's been my sole companion on occasions, and Councillor Bushby occasionally. All right. Councillor Bushby.
Occasionally?
Occasionally. So we do need to develop that because it's important that we do look at the budget and keep on top of it. Because there are black clouds in the distance who on the other hand, there are some sunny clouds. I noticed somewhere the other day I was reading about College was noted for its Marine Innovation Centre on a national level. So we are being noticed. We're being noticed as College. We're finally getting, after about 20 years, the Operations Centre is already started. And then we've got the regeneration stuff to get on with. So obviously, I agree with everybody who says this local government review, we could have done without it, but we are with it. It's the government's decision. So let's get on with what we can deliver as a council and let the politicians just carry on talking, because that's what they're so good at. So I'll just ask you to note the report. I don't think there's any recommendation. No, there isn't. Just for noting. Right. So, okay, thank you very much. Right, okay, let's then move on to item 11, housing strategy, which is pages 13 to 82 on your agenda, and to receive a report from the planning manager.
Good evening, councillors. Just say I have the planning policy team leader with me this evening, so he will present part of the report as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, this item 11, it relates to the District Council housing strategy. The purpose of your agenda report is to consider the responses to the consultation on the draft housing strategy and a recommendation for its subsequent amendment and adoption. As you'll all be aware, the council strategic plan has a specific action to develop and implement a housing strategy. Hence, officers with members have been developing the strategy. It's a 5-year strategy to cover the period up to 2030. Work began with members back in August of 24. We had a workshop here at Cadstown, a series of meetings throughout the autumn, winter of 2024, both with the lead member for housing and more widely briefings to all of you, leadership briefings. And at full council on the 2nd of December, we agreed the draft consultation. It was subsequently subject to consultation for an 8-week period from the 13th of December through to the 7th of February 2025. A wide range of key stakeholders were directly notified, so registered providers, statutory consultees, developers, agents, service providers, and our town and parish councils. There was an item at each of the area advisory committees for the parish councils on the housing strategy, and we held a planning agents forum back in December and also had an item in it there. So it was well publicised. It was also supported by a publicity programme through our comms team and with press releases and social media coverage. We did develop an online questionnaire to guide and support responses, and there was a further member briefing on the 6th of March to run through the consultation summary document. In total, the consultation received 55 responses by questionnaire, 22 directly by email, from a mix of residents, statutory consultees and organisations. There was an overall sort of option to grade the strategy, and the overall sentiment is over 3 out of 5 stars. That does, however, conceal quite a strong bias of respondents that rated the strategy 3 or 4 out of 5. In terms of the vision, which was developed at the workshop back in August, which is to meet our community's housing related needs by addressing affordability, enabling the right homes in appropriate places and facilitating delivery. Almost half of respondents either agree or strongly agree that that's an appropriate vision. Less than a third, so 29%, either disagree or strongly disagree. I think it's worth highlighting, as set out in your agenda report, that a number of comments made on this specific item did raise a lot of issues beyond the vision itself. I think where concern is raised, considers items more widely than the vision itself. The draft strategy includes 3 aims that were developed from the member workshop. Aim 1, a home for everyone. Aim 2, sustainable and inclusive housing. And aim 3, thriving and healthy communities. There's strong support for all 3 aims in the consultation responses, with more than 50% of responses being positive and in favour. And generally, not a huge level of negativity, but the greatest sort of negative response, disagree or strongly disagree, at around 20% for aim 1.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, councillors, officers. I'm just going to go through some of the more detailed comments that we've received and how we've looked to go and alter the strategy. I think it's fair to say there's broad support for the strategy as a whole, its scope, its principles, its vision, aims and objectives. However, there was some scepticism about the deliverability of it, that it's laudable but potentially unrealistic with some of the ambitions that we've got in there. However, I think that the general consensus is that we need to be ambitious if we want to see change. There's concerns that it's too long, too many objectives, and it should be shorter and more focused. However, as we say, it's a high-level strategic document, and it's important that we do cover all aspects that could impact on the housing in the area. There's real concerns around capacity of infrastructure and investment that's made in that, and I think we all hear that on a day-to-day basis. And that we need to address shortfalls and we need to see improvements to that infrastructure for all of our communities. There's a need for new housing to be better meeting local needs of our communities, i.e. smaller and more affordable housing and higher levels of actual affordable housing. Calls for initiatives to better use empty properties and underutilised land and buildings. And around that is not just about housing, but revitalising our town centres as well. There was concerns around holiday lets and second homes. We know that there are things in progress, hopefully at a national level and locally now, where we can start to deal with some of that. And a recognition that we need to address affordability not only by addressing shortfalls in housing and house prices, but increasing economic prosperity as well. The next two are sort of two sides of the same coin. We had a lot of residents picking up that we need to hold developers to account, and they need to be providing what is needed by our local communities. And then on the flip side, we had the development industry asking us to be more pragmatic, to help them and support smaller developers, help them deliver. I think there's an element of both, recognising the challenges that the development industry have as well in delivering homes. There was a request from them to not increase technical standards above building regulations, increase the number of small sites or disaggregate large sites that we allocate for development, introduce flexibility in the size, type and tenure of site dwellings on sites to make it easier for them to make viability to stack up on developments, and to support the take-up of affordable housing through registered providers, where we know there's been challenges of developers finding registered providers who are willing to take on affordable housing. So in terms of the response, I think there's a lot of useful points that were raised through the consultation. A lot of the points are already picked up, at least at a high level, and actually aren't appropriate to be picked up in this high level strategy. More points, whilst valuable, are probably applicable to the action plan or to consider through the local plan or business plans more internally to the actual council itself. That being said, there are a number of visions that we're looking to take forward that we discussed at the recent member briefing. We won't go through them all in detail, but members do have a track change version of the plan at Appendix 2, which is pages 45 to 81 of your agenda. But they can be summarised as a series of minor changes or corrections to improve the wording. Addition of some opportunities to rebalance the challenges that we've got presented in there. It was probably inappropriately focused on the challenges, so we tried to balance that up a little bit around opportunities around our high quality environment, around external funding that we're drawing in, town centre regeneration, self-built housing, for example. That increased emphasis on improving economic prosperity, recognising the need to be sensitive with retrofits when we're talking about heritage assets, where you may have, for example, have to be careful if you're blocking up drafty gaps in buildings, etc. Rebalancing consideration of affordable housing and viability considerations. There's some criticism that often it's left to last and that it's infrastructure that comes before affordable housing. Now, we know that that's not always the case, but we just want to make sure that that's put there explicitly. And then recognition of other infrastructure that wasn't actually mentioned explicitly in the strategy, such as play spaces, green infrastructure, sustainable transport options. And about balancing delivery of housing with protecting what's important to us locally, our built and our natural environments, knowing that actually that's our golden goose really for tourism, etc., and important to our local communities. Increasing that emphasis on opportunities for underutilised land, spaces and places, adding Devon County Council and care providers to our list of partners. And then finally, recognising that it's not possible to realise all of these ambitions at the same time, and that it will be necessary to prioritise. And the final aspect is to just include a reference to the establishment of a group of officers and councillors moving forward to deliver an action plan. So I'll hand back to Helen Smith to go through the recommendations.
So the recommendation set out at paragraph 5.1, two parts. So that the council agreed to adopt the housing strategy in its amended form, so as set out at Appendix 2, reflecting the outcomes of the public consultation, as summarised at Appendix 1, and that the council also delegates authority to the lead member for housing in consultation with the leader and chief executive to establish a task and finish group to support the development of the delivery plan and its subsequent implementation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Chris Hodgson first, and then Councillor Tinsley.
Right, councillors, I really do commend this housing strategy. We've worked hard collectively. We've listened to views from all our councillors. The officers have worked very diligently to pull all these things together. It's an unenviable task to try and bring a lot of, at times, disparate comments, but important comments. I think we have actually at long last got a document that is a blueprint for what Torridge needs and what our communities need. And the one thing I didn't hear our officers say, and it's easy to pick up and find fault, but you didn't mention social housing. And social housing is an integral part of this strategy. We have opportunities coming up in the future and we must seize them. So when we talk about challenges and opportunities, yes, we do have challenges. The whole country, as we've been discussing this evening, is experiencing challenges regarding local government reorganisation. But wherever we are, we have got something that we can share as what our communities need. So I would like to propose that we accept all the recommendations and I seek your support. Thank you.
Councillor Tinsley.
Yes, I will second that. Thank you very much for your work as well, Councillor Hodgson. Just a comment that I noticed that there were a few mentions in the report to Homes England, which I understand is now going to be abolished. I hope that won't affect the. I suppose that we'll have to pick that up in the working group. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously it's been a major piece of work and it's great we've got this. Just a couple of quick queries. One thing I picked on, there was a mention of the fact our empty homes strategy expired in 2015. Does that mean we don't have a policy as such for empty homes? And the other thing was there was a reference to planning restrictions for changing holiday homes to housing. And I just wonder if you just give us any clarity on that, and also, can we turn things around the other way? So we have planning permission to change houses into holiday homes?
Do you want to respond to that, Helen, or Ian?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the empty home strategy, that doesn't sit with us in planning, so
Okay.
I
that's
don't know
fine.
who's best to respond on that. So the word proposals for the new use class to come into force, which might be what you're referring to, Councillor Thomas.
I'm just picking up what I read in the report.
Yeah, which isn't in place as yet. I think we have policies in the local government that protect holiday accommodation, so we do have provision already. But I think that the intent certainly was to bring in use classes that address that sort of change of use between them.
Councillor Hodgson, you'd like to come back on that?
Yeah, the empty home strategy, throughout the years that I've been a councillor, this is my second term of office, empty homes has been brought up at various meetings. And the practicalities of appointing somebody to work in empty homes officer has been explored. And I know there was some work in Easter Water. I think a group of councillors identified properties that they thought were empty, and we bought a report. I'm searching my mind to talk about the difficulties of actually bringing those empty homes back in, and it's not straightforward and can be quite costly. And at the time, we didn't have the resource perhaps to match it, so therefore it wasn't a priority. But it's something, again, this housing strategy will review and look at. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up, Councillor Thomas, because it is something which is close to my heart as well, because we do have far more empty properties, particularly within the town centre, than we certainly should have for an authority of our size. I mean, it's not good. It's not good. But, you know, rest assured, it will be worked on, and I'm sure Councillor Hodgson will keep the pressure up to actually try and address that.
And I know it's something a lot of members of the public sort of criticise us on.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
They certainly brought it to my attention on several occasions. Okay, well, it's been proposed and it's been seconded by Councillor Tinsley. Please raise your hand and show support, please.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to item 12, a shared prosperity fund investment plan report, pages 83 to 90, and to receive a report from the economic development manager. Chris, you've got 2 minutes exactly.
I was going to say, Chair, you've had some pretty weighty subjects this evening, so I will, my first time says I'll keep this brief.
Thank you.
Effectively, this is a one-year continuation of existing activities previously supported by members through the last 2.5 years worth of shared prosperity fund. The key is really continuing sort of a number of projects that have started to grow their impact. The reality is that within 1 year, if we look to start a number of new projects, we would then have to drop existing pieces of work that are underway. And the reality is that we would lose too much time to actually achieve the impacts that we want to have. The other sort of piece of reality is that this in itself will constitute a loss of capacity for the economic development team, thus meaning that, again, we're immediately constrained in what we can do. It is based on existing strategic commitments, including the economic strategy, and there's additional input from the economy, innovation and skills groups in Northern Futures for that, as well as our regeneration strategies in the different towns of Bideford and Great Torrington. The key really, as I said, for this 1 year is around deliverability, creating impact, and making sure that we're using the Shared Prosperity Fund to fund projects that have importance but might not be able to collect funding from other places. So there will also be other activities seeking to bring in wider funding for different projects. I think where it's also useful to look at is the 3 additional projects that we're requesting funding for from outside of that Shared Prosperity Fund. 2 of those, I will confess, in fact, I think all 3 actually feature within the investment plan for North Devon Council. who, if you look at the allocations that are provided this year, actually have a significantly larger allocation due to the size of population, despite the fact that strategically we're aligned on most of our projects in the investment plan. So it's a case of making sure that we're not left out in many of those, in particular around that Squee Devon piece. The water quality one is critical, not only because of our shared passion in terms of making sure that we do have clean waters, but the biosphere is engaging heavily in a major sort of upcoming project with South West Water and with a key player such as the Crown Estate. We need to demonstrate our support as part of that, even if it's for a small token amount. And I would be very loath to allow North Devon Council to go off and develop inward investment pieces for us as a wider region without Torridge being right at the heart of that as well. In which case I might be slightly over 2 minutes, but Chair, I was quite close, hopefully.
Thank you. You can come again. Oh, no. Councillor Brenton.
Chair, I'm interested in the Business Boost project, which is somewhere on this table. Apart from things like education, this council, the health service, most of the enterprises in this area are small and medium enterprises. So what's the percentage of businesses who would be qualifying for this Business Boost? In other words, how much of Torridge has these small and medium enterprises?
I'm fairly sure that's a fairly straightforward answer of 100%.
100%.
Yeah,
So-
we are completely kind of micro and
So
SME.
this, in fact, this Business Boost program would cover practically any legitimate
And
enterprise.
one of the crucial parts of it and why kind of we've been working closely on the proposals with North Devon Plus is that actually a wide range of agricultural support schemes fall away as of the 31st of March. And so actually, if we want to make sure that that critically important sector is also supported, then we need to make sure that that sort of programme is there. And it may well be that Sean wants to come in at that point and add that.
Can I just say 103,000 doesn't seem to be much when you're looking at a plethora of small enterprises that need our support.
Sean, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, I think there's probably one section of business grouping that won't be supported, and that's pre-startup. So those are people who've got a business idea but don't yet have a business registration, but there is a different fund administered by North Devon Plus from North Devon Plus's own funds to support that sector. Boost supports just about every registered business.
So can I just say, so in other words, any small business in Torridge is likely to be eligible for something from this fund. It's going to be spread pretty thin.
Yes, potentially, it depends on them making an application and the criteria and meeting the criteria of the fund, but they would be able to apply if they met the criteria of the fund with their business.
Councillor Conaghan?
Just in relation to that, as a result of our art special at external, we referred one of the artists to that support, and she found it really useful. For that free one-to-one business support, which is hard to find in other places. So I think it's really worthwhile, and like you say, it's open to everybody. So please do tell people about it.
Okay, thank you. So, else proposed, who proposed that from this side? Anyone? Oh, hasn't been, yeah. Right, so we need some. Councillor James is proposing it. Right, Councillor Smith has seconded it. So you've seen the recommendations on page 90. So there is a number of 8 bullet points, but basically, we'll take them all as one recommendation. So have a show of hands and support, please.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on, item 13, there are no A9 questions. Item 14, there are no petitions. Likewise, there are no notices of motion for item 15. So that brings us to item 16, which is the exclusion of the public from the meeting. From the remainder of the meeting because of the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. So, Councillor Rock seconded that? All in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you.